Hello, and welcome to a special National Coming Out Day edition of IASA Soundbytes. I'm Darren Reffitt, the chair of IASA's Education Committee and the director of Product Marketing Excellence with Guidewire Software, as well as being the lead of Guidewire's LGBTQ+ employee resource group, Pride Guides. And I'm proud to be joined today by Bernadette Smith, the author of Inclusive 360, an awesome new book that provides what I'd describe as a practical, easy to implement framework for organizations striving to be more inclusive for all employees on the diversity spectrum. Bernadette is also the founder and president of Equality Institute, a Chicagoland firm that provides diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting and strategic support. She's spoken to thousands of professionals in a wide range of industries and has trained people from more than 20 countries. Thank you for joining me today, Bernadette.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start with how you got into the business of educating organizations on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a pretty trendy business today, but you've been a leader in this effort for years. How did you get started?
I got started in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion about 17 years ago when I started my first company. When I was living in Massachusetts, it became the first state in the U.S. to have same-sex marriage, to have marriage equality for LGBTQ couples. And so back then, I was planning events for a nonprofit, and I decided I was going to start a wedding planning company to help these couples feel safe when navigating a very traditional, heteronormative, very bride and groom focused industry. Well, what I didn't realize was that my work was going to take me far beyond the work I was doing with these couples. I was having a great time planning the weddings, but what I learned was that I could have a much greater impact on the world if I also helped wedding planners and other professionals in the wedding, hospitality, and travel industry become more inclusive. So I started writing books about LGBTQ inclusion and speaking and training. And eventually, as time went on, I expanded my work beyond those industries and beyond the topic of LGBTQ. And yes, I retired as a wedding planner. And I do that kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion work more broadly. For everyone, actually, which is why my book is called Inclusive 360. It's for everyone. But I think that this work is really important because what I learned when in those years of planning weddings was that I have the power to create spaces where people could move through the world however they identify, authentically themselves. And that is what I feel like my purpose is to help people, especially those from underrepresented groups, especially from those on the margins, feel safe in the world by doing speaking, training, educating, writing, all of this stuff that I love to do is ultimately what I believe going to help increase diversity within organizations and help organizations create a more inclusive, safe space for everyone to be authentically themselves.
There are just so many great ideas in this book with practical solutions that can help companies to be more inclusive for not only employees, but also for customers and other stakeholders. We obviously can't get into all of them on this session, but could you give us the one piece of advice you'd give to companies that are trying to get started and take a positive step for DEI efforts? What would that be?
I think it's really important to know where you are now in order to figure out where you're going. So to really level set yourself and figure out what is the current state of your company, of your organization. What are some of the diversity numbers at the higher levels? What do those demographics look like? Where do you source talent? How many people of color are moving up through the organization? What sort of plan do you have in place to recruit, to have a diverse supply chain, or do you have a diverse supply chain? These are the types of questions organizations can do the work of reflecting on themselves and establishing a baseline to really, understand where you are, to then figure out where you're going. And I wrote this book, Inclusive 360, because I wanted to help people get into action. And those types of questions to help you figure out where you are part of the framework of the book. There's a framework called the ARC method, and it actually takes you through these types of questions. For example, Why are candidates rejected? At what stage are they rejected in the hiring process? Are there particular leaders who reject these candidates disproportionately? So by figuring out where you are now with those types of answers, you can then move into solutions mode. And the book is full of solutions. For example, solutions related to increasing diversity are things like stop showing resumes to hiring managers and ask hiring managers to instead focus on conversations with candidates, remove 4-year degree requirements from open positions. So those are the types of solutions, and there's lots and lots more that are featured in the book. And we can all take baby steps in our own way, but it all has to start with figuring out what the current state is.
Thanks, Bernadette. I loved the ARC framework, and I hope our viewers get as much value out of it as I did. I know the book is available at Amazon.com, but how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about you or your consulting services?
You can visit BernadetteSmith.com. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again, Bernadette. I really appreciate you joining us today in recognition of National Coming Out Day. And thank you to you, our viewers. As always, we welcome your feedback. Please comment below and follow us on YouTube. Feel free to tweet at me at DMReffit or at IASA at IASA Inc. You can also email me at dreffit@guidewire.com. If you'd like to suggest topics or speakers you'd like to hear from, we'd love to hear that again. And again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Soundbytes.